First thing you see there is the frame going in the front axle. When they decided to move to the moving assembly line in 1913, all these different components that you're seeing here today would have come from a different section of the factory. These are just sub-assemblies that they put together as the chassis rolled down the line. The original line it was developed in late 1912, early 1913. Really what it was doing, what the main purpose of the moving assembly line was to shorten the length of time it took to put these vehicles together. Prior to this, they required about 12 to 15 man hours to assemble each vehicle. Once we got this going, it was down under 90 minutes for the complete assembly as it moved through the plant. The numbers, as you know, there were 15 million Model Ts produced between 1909 and 1927. In the early 1920s, or 1921 or 22, they had, Ford had 55% of the market share in the world. 55% of all vehicles around the world were made here in Highland Park. They got so good at it, these cars were rolling off the assembly line every 60 to 90 seconds. So it was quite, in those days, it was quite a feat. The rear end is going up. You see here, if these 4 people are doing, usually in the factory we had about 8 people moving around. There's a great little video in the museum that shows some live action taken from the mid-1920s, and there would have been 6 or 8 people swarming around this vehicle as it rolled down the assembly line at about 10 feet per minute. Front wheels are going on. These are 1927 style wire wheels. They were introduced 26 and 27. Prior to that, the Ford wheels were all wood spokes. You see many examples down the field today. We're buckling up the rear end, the shackles on the rear end there. One thing you'll notice about this chassis, it appears to be a series of triangles. You can see the triangular rear end, triangular wishbone underneath, and sort of a pivot point around the motor. This allowed the vehicle to sort of articulate over the very rough roads that were used at the time. As Wade mentioned a few minutes ago, the roads that, the very best roads they had back in the teens and 20s would be equivalent to our very worst county roads today.
Your wishbone is not in.
Against the vehicles on them, rather than the Ford or any other brand, had to be able to go through some pretty lousy conditions. There's 3 pedals on the transmission, as you see, a little different than our modern cars. Most of the owners of these Model Ts really came from a horse and buggy, and this would have been the very first automobile that they ever owned. So a lot of the other vehicles that you may see around the field today have a series of levers and clutches and a lot of little knobs to pull. So the average driver had to be quite a bit of a mechanic to make these operate. Ford simplified this with this planetary transmission. See the muffler going on there. The pedal on the very left is really your high and low gear. The pedal in the middle is your reverse band. The pedal on the right is the brake, the brake, which actually slows the engine down as well. So, nothing going on. The gas tank that Reed's installing there would have been under the seat of the driver, and always an awkward place to put it, but nonetheless it worked. There was no fuel pump on these cars. It was a gravity-feed fuel system. So underneath that tank there was a sediment bowl that ran down to the carburetor on the front of the motor here, and basically it was a little bit higher than the car, so hence the fuel ran into it. The problem arose when you were kind of running low on fuel and going up a very steep hill. Obviously, gravity would not supply the carburetor. So the old trick in the day was to go back to the bottom of the hill, turn around and back up the hill to supply gas to the carburetor. Any Model T owner knew all these little tricks. Doing up the front shackles. One thing that Mr. Ford did when he developed the Model T motor was really re-engineer a lot of it. Through the 4 cylinders, it was the first inline 4-cylinder engine in the automotive world where the block was cast in one chassis. Prior to that, and you'll see examples of it out on the field today, they were cast as single individual cylinders or in pairs. And they did not have the removable head. Ford was the first to develop this type of head here that we're all familiar with on most of our vehicles today as a removable head in one piece. It was a great evolution in the engine development in that it allowed the mechanics and the operators to get at the top of the cylinder and the valves very easily. We're just buttoning up the dashboard there and installing the gas line. Rob's doing up the pivot arm on the steering column. And a few other adjustments. One of the other things about the Model T motor that's a little bit different than a lot of the cars of the day, it had what's known as an internal magneto. Inside this crankcase housing here was a series of field coils that generated the electricity for the coil box and then also the 4 spark plugs here. What we call the equivalent of a distributor on today's car is now run by the timer. It's a very simple. It runs off the end of the cam shaft and determines as it hits each wire, it provides spark to that plug. A rather simple ignition system, but was very, very effective. Putting the rad on. One thing that Mr. Ford was also obsessed with during the production run of this vehicle was the cost. As he started off, his main idea was to produce a very low-cost automobile. It started off in 1908 at the princely sum of $850. By the time he got going with it, by the mid-20s, because of efficiencies in production and payback on the equipment that he was using to build it, he could produce a Model T Touring in the early 1920s for about $240. So he went from $850 for a car down to about $240 a car. And this really is popular. A little bit of Lake St. Clair going in the radiator. We're getting there, firing it up. Oil in the crankcase, gallon. Great hand brake going on here. Just wanted to let the front end down and give it a crank.
Ready when you want?
This vehicle would have been provided with the starter from the factory the last time they had electric starters. We're going to show you a little demonstration of how to crank it. Put it right there, and there we go. Two levers that Bob is playing with there. One is the strong on the right-hand side. The other one is the start, back and forth, and the match of the starter. I get that.
Get down, Rob.
After let it down, it will improve the other hand. That's part of how far it goes on. Left foot here is putting the wire behind here there. Great. Very, very simple to operate. Load up the carburetor to give what we call a free start, or starting on compression. We all take it. Into the upper cylinder and then turn the key in the morning. One more time, Rob?
One more.
There we go, folks.